Hey, my name is Spoon, and today I'm not actually going to be getting any battles, so if that's what you're looking for, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and do an analysis of this team. It's an alright team. Up until about 3 minutes ago, I was very happy with it, but I'll talk about it. I enjoyed a lot, though. I've enjoyed it a lot. Currently, I'm 12 wins, 0 losses on a pretty decent ult with it. But that's because I haven't seen one certain Pokemon. We'll get into that. So I'll go over just a little overview before we actually look at the team builder. It is Sand Stall. 2 Pokemon have pressure, so that really helps with needing to switch out and stuff, because once I wear down the PP, I no longer have to worry about that certain move, so yeah, that's pretty darn useful. So Sandstall, it's got a very Gen 4-esque thing going on with Zapdos, well, with everybody except for Altaria. Mega Altaria, though, is very good, in my opinion, so yeah, it's kind of the idea behind it. There are quite a few different options that can be run instead of what I currently have, and I will, of course, I'll go ahead and discuss those, but right away you can see that Kyurem Black can 6-0 my team. It can OHKO 5 of my Pokemon if it's a special set, so I kind of have to play around it. Having pressure helps a lot, but also having to predict a lot matters. It's been pretty tough. It has to be the specially based Life Orb Attacker, though, to do all that. And in my opinion, that's not the most common set, and I guess that's not an opinion, it's just one that I haven't run into as much as, say, sub 3 attacks or an Outrage one. So that's probably the only thing that I'm afraid of. Maybe Crawdont, or if Azumarill allowed to get a Belly Drum, which against my team it usually isn't, it can be a problem. So I think that that's enough. I'll describe threats and stuff in a moment, but I want to go over the team now. So let's look at this team builder. I started off with Hippowdon because I actually went into this wanting to make a Sandstall team, and personally I find this Pokemon more appropriate than Tyranitar because of its, for one, utility. I know Tyranitar learns Roar, but I find Hippowdon more reliable using it because it also has recovery with Slack Off. So yeah, it's got to have leftovers for that passive recovery and Sandstream, so that I get the minus 6% per turn or something like that. So it's very useful for stalling out my opponent. Now the moves, quite a few different options. I keep saying because I'm trying to think of a lot of things to say, but quite a few different options with moves. Earthquake is pretty staple, I should say, because it's stab and it hits a lot of steel types that Mega Altaria needs out of the way. The main goal is to stall with all Mons, and then in the end either sweep with Crocoon or Mega Altaria, so probably should have said that. It doesn't matter. I wouldn't suggest taking Earthquake off this set for anything. Yeah, it's pretty necessary. Then the next is Whirlwind. It's great for phasing, especially whenever you force your opponent to switch, because Hippowdon has, well, massive defense, so it can wall a lot of Pokemon, but so yeah, if you switch into this and then your opponent's forced to switch because it can't do anything, you can either Whirlwind, rack up some hazard damage, or Slack Off for free. Slack Off is needed on this set. That's the only reason to use this over Tyranitar, in my opinion, unless typing matters to you, which doesn't really matter on this team which one you would run if you're just looking at typing. Tyranitar is a possible option instead of Hippowdon, but that's only if you run it with superpower, fighting coverage. So Slack Off is needed, goes well with Whirlwind, and for momentum in general. Ice Fang is sort of a toss-up move. As you can see, 3 Pokemon on my team learn Stealth Rock, Heatran, Celebi, and Hippowdon, so Stealth Rock could go there, but the way I like playing Stall is to use your momentum for mauling a Pokemon, so I like Ice Fang there so that Landorus and Gliscor cannot just set up for free on this. Set up a sub, a taunt, Stealth Rocks, just U-turn out, whatever they decide to do. In general, they can't do that for free because I have Ice Fang. Now, it doesn't do a ton of damage, but it's decent coverage. The EVs, pretty standard. I mean, 420 HP. It's pretty necessary to have on a team. These EVs maximize defense after I put some in special defense. The special defense, it seems irrelevant because it doesn't even reach 200. I like it when it does, but in this case it just doesn't. Anyway, that special defense makes it to where Life Orb, Landorus, Incarnate will not 2-hit KO with HP Ice. It doesn't seem very relevant in the current meta, but I think that that's a pretty solid Landorus set. It can Calm Mind on a lot of things. So, I don't know. A +1 won't OHKO. It's really nice. And Ice Fang then will do a lot of damage. But regardless of that, it just helps it not get 2-hit KO'd. And then the rest thrown in defense because Hippowdon has great physical defense and can switch in on a lot of things. So, it's very important to have this on a Sandstall team. Looking at its base stats, I guess they're right here. 108 HP, 112 attack, and that attack is actually pretty decent without any investment. Speed is the only thing, well, I guess special attack, but speed is the only problem with, you know, most stall teams. You don't usually have a fast Pokemon, and I run into that on this team as well. So I'm gonna go over some I'm gonna go over how I deal with that in a moment. Let's move on to the second Pokemon. I'll describe some synergy with this in a bit after I describe the rest of my team, maybe. Pardon me. So here we have Tinkerbell Celebi, a fairly popular Gen 4 set. It was used a little bit in Gen 5. Not sure I've seen it yet in Gen 6, but it's here and it's relevant in the current metagame, I think. I'm actually going to go ahead and change it right now, or show a possible change. If you want to take actually a lot out of HP and run this set, it's also possible, like, you'll probably want to change it to a leftovers number for HP, but I guess this is kind of fine as well. Now the only reason to do this is because this outspeeds the standard Kyurem Black set. That way, you can Thunder Wave it before it kills you, and it really helps a lot with the pressure. Go ahead and change that back to how it was, though, for now. So it is a Life Orb Celebi now. That doesn't seem too good on a stall team, and as you can see, it's quite offensive, especially if you decide to run 100 HP and however much speed that was. But this thing helps break opposing stall, well, you know, a lot of Pokemon, and generally it's already bulky enough with 232 HP, so Life Orb is pretty good. Leftovers is a possible option, but it really prevents the damage output that you want with Leaf Storm and HP Fire. So Thunder Wave is pretty much necessary on this Celebi. Like I said, the rest of my team is pretty slow. I just got a text message, sorry. The rest of my team is pretty slow, so Thunder Wave helps mitigate, yeah, that's the word, that a bit. That way, my opponents, well, the status is good, and if they get full parrot, it's good too, so it's a bit annoying, but also good. What else can be run there is Stealth Rock if you don't want it on Heatran. I am running it on Heatran. But you can run Stealth Rock there and run a little bit more defensive, or play it a little bit more defensively. You can run Taunt, possibly Toxic. I think Thunder Wave's the best option though, especially because Mega Altaria is here. Then I have Leaf Storm. Generally, you wouldn't be doing that. So, like I said, this is a stall team, but it likes keeping momentum. Leaf Storm does massive amount of damage on switch-ins. Unfortunately, with my current setup, I can't beat Heatran. I actually just recently changed it to HP Fire, because I wasn't having problems with Heatran. But if I were to, I could change that to Earth Power. And if you want to use the team and you want to change that to Earth Power, it's up to you. And if you want to change Thunder Wave to Toxic or Taunt, it's up to you. I don't have Taunt on this team, so it might be a little bit more difficult to beat opposing stall, but with the two setup mons that I have, it makes it a lot easier to break stall. Now the EVs, I hate saying this, but I don't really know what they do. I know that the special attack is enough to 2-hit KO Ferrothorn and Scizor with Hidden Power Fire. Every single variant of both of them, so even if they're both max special defense, max HP for whatever reason, it's still 2-hit KO. The HP is, I think, is for Life Orb. Because if you run 400, then you'll be losing 40 HP. If you run 399, then you're only losing, I think, 30 HP. So it's a good Life Orb number. And then the speed, I think, can't tell you, but you do run however much speed. You can, like I said, alternatively run 168 speed, and that outspeeds 1 point for Kyurem. If you're not running Hidden Power Fire, then you want to run 164 speed, but I am running Hidden Power Fire, so yeah, there's that. I might actually have to change my EVs a bit to deal with these IVs. Ooh, that was stupid. To deal with the IVs, I'm not too certain. Hasn't mattered so far. Oh, Natural Cure is a great ability, because its last move is going to be Recover. It's needed for recovery. Rest is possible, but I don't find it as reliable if, say, you want Celebi to stay in and wall something, and also do some damage. Rest isn't really so good for that. In the Hidden Power Fire slot, you could also run U-Turn, if you want to gain that kind of momentum and switch a move on Zapdos to Volt Switch. I don't suggest it, though. I know Leaf Storm plus U-Turn is decent, but the Hidden Power Fire coverage is great, especially with the Life Orb. Natural Cure, forgot to say. This Pokemon has its status cured when it switches out. This is a good reason why you could use, does this learn Taunt? I keep saying it. It might not. Huh. That's silly. Alright, well you can't use Taunt on this. But either way, Natural Cure makes it to where it can stay in on Chansey for maybe 2 turns. I don't know why it would, but you can Leaf Storm it, maybe even Thunder Wave it to try and force it to Heal Bell or something, but, you know, it's not a bad Pokemon. I think it's very underrated in the current metagame, Celebi in general. The only reason I would say not to use it is because Bisharp. Knockoff, you know, a lot of Pokemon are running that now. So, there's the Celebi and the way it comes in for this. They're both weak to Ice, and that's unfortunate, so my next 2 Pokemon do resist. As you can see, 4 of my Pokemon are weak to Ice. That's a problem, of course. So you could probably switch Altaria out, but it's really good at beating opposing Stall, and it's a win condition, so I would say the only thing you could switch Altaria out to is a Clefable with Magic Guard that sets up Calm Mind. It's a possible switch out, but then that's too many special attackers, so yeah, no teams are perfect, but this thing's weak to water, and this thing, it resists water. They both resist electric. I do have a Fire Grass Water Core, of course, and Hippowdon off to the side for that. So that's pretty good. I'm running a Crocoon. There's really not much I can say about this. It's Crocoon. It's a win condition, or it sets up early. That's something pretty good that I think it can do. If you need it to, like set up some Calm Minds and Scald early on in the game, and then let it die so that Mega Altaria can sweep late game, that's another possibility. Something really cool about this Suicune as well is the pressure ability. If this Pokemon is the target of a foe's move, that move loses 1 additional PP. So, say there's a Jirachi, it's got Iron Head. Instead of having 16 PP, I think it has 16, it'll have 8, or instead of having 32, it has 16. So it really limits the opponent. Say they're trying to Toxic Stall or Seismic Toss Stall. If they're trying to stall you at all, pressure is going to help a lot. Let me pause for a second, I gotta look something up. Okay, so Fusion Bolt only has 8 PP, so if you are able to survive one and maybe burn it, then you can stall that for 4 turns, or you can just switch to Zapdos and switch between Suicune and Zapdos and stall at the PP of Kyurem Black. So it's pretty useful, I think, the pressure ability. No one really notices it, so hey, there's that. Another alternative to this kind of Suicune is an Ice Beam one or a Roar one, still with Scald. Probably Rest Talk still, I don't know. Maybe Resto Chesto, I wouldn't suggest that, or Tailwind, because those are for more offensive-based teams. But if you want Ice Beam for additional ice coverage, or Roar for additional phasing, then you can definitely do that. But I find this Suicune, the standard one, to be nice enough. Run 4 in speed for facing other Crocoons that may run 4 in special attack or special defense. I don't know. Maybe they run it. I already said that, but just for speed, you know. outspeed other base 85s. I don't know how many of those there are. Overall, Suicune is pretty good in general. Heatran has quite a few different options. I'm running 76 speed. This should outspeed most other Heatrans that are defensive and most Scizor. Unless they're running max speed. This outspeeds most offensive Scizor with superpower, so you can no-code with Lava Plume first. As with Suicune and Hippowdon, Leftovers is the chosen item. I think I already described Life Orb on Celebi is for that extra damage that is necessary, but Leftovers is the chosen item for this set because it has no recovery in that passive region. It's really nice. Heatran is also immune to Sandstorm, so the cool thing about this is it doesn't take that -6% even when sand is up. It's the only one on my team besides Hippowdon himself that is like this, but it doesn't really need to, or my team doesn't get stalled out because everything on my team has recovery, if you didn't notice, except for Heatran. Heatran is there just to wall certain Pokemon like Talonflame or opposing Heatran. It helps take those out, and it helps beat Ferrothorn. And that's a big deal against my team. So I'm running Hidden Power Fire here. Could be Earth Power for opposing Heatran, but HP Fire to KOs Ferrothorn, and so does Lava Plume. Might OHKO, I'm not too sure about that. Maybe some variants. The EVs, I already discussed the speed, and the rest maximizes special defense because I think Heatran is best run that way due to its typing. Even with max defense, it's not really going to be taking close combats and earthquakes as well as you would like. Now I am running Stealth Rock on this Heatran. Alternatives are Will-O-Wisp, could be useful, and Toxic, again could be useful to help stall out, or you could run Taunt. Now I think that's kind of big. The only thing I'd be willing to give up on this team is to give Hippowdon Stealth Rock instead of Ice Fang. The main problem with that is momentum. If I were to do that, then it would set up rocks and Landorus/Gliscor could do whatever they wanted. I don't really like to do that, so Heatran forces a lot of switches, a lot more than Hippowdon will, so I like it to have Stealth Rock instead, but Taunt is definitely the most viable switch there. Roar is good for phasing. It prevents a Azumarill to set up a Belly Drum if they predict you to switch, or, you know, anything in general from setting up. Lava Plume then is for coverage, hits steel types, mainly Ferrothorn, and Earth Power hits opposing Heatran to it KOs all variants. Usually outspeeds them too, unless they're max speed. This is a switch in for fire types. I know I have two resists already, but I also have the Celebi that's weak to it. Sometimes it's obvious when my opponent's going to go for a fire type move, sometimes it's not. So this thing walls Charizard X that don't run Earthquake, and it can either Earth Power or Roar them if they want to set up on you. I think it's pretty decent in general. Then we have Mega Altaria. This is a great buff to stall in my opinion. Unfortunately, it's overlooked in a stall setting because, of course, Mega Sableye. It's probably the most reliable Pokemon for a stall team, but as you can see, mine is more of an offensive momentum based one, whereas a Mega Sableye stall team, which I have uploaded with before, those are more, hey, let's take this into the very, very late game. This team is more of a 40 to 60 turn win. Definitely not over 100. I don't think I've ever gone that far with this team. So yeah, the item has to be Altaria Knight. That makes it to where it'll take Sandstorm damage, but it has to be Mega Altaria. EVs look kind of crazy, but I'll describe them. Dragon Dance, it can set up, okay, let me not start with Dragon Dance. I'll start with Roost and Heal Bell. If this thing gets burned, or if anything on my team gets status, Heal Bell is really great early game. That way it can heal itself, or any of my team, and then Roost back up, and probably switch out after that. Usually I don't go for Frustration until I'm actually going to sweep, but this thing hits Mega Sableye early, late, mid-game with Frustration for tons of damage, and then denies its Will-O-Wisp by just Heal Belling that right off. So, this helps against opposing stall by breaking it. It can Roost and Heal Bell, you know, I already described this, if it gets Toxic or something by opposing stall, and usually just Dragon Dance on any wall's face. The only problem with it is steel types. You know, I'm running Mono Frustration, I'm not running Fire Blast or Earthquake. which are both options that you could run over Heal Bell, but you'd have to change these EVs a lot if you wanted to do that. But Dragon Dance and Frustration is great, and that's why I run Hidden Power Fire on this and Lava Plume on this. That way I can take out those steel types, so Altaria has a lot easier of a chance sweeping. Pixelate is a great ability. Let me read it. Normal moves, like Frustration, become Fairy-type moves and do 1.3 times more damage, so that's really good. I run Frustration instead of Return, because most Ditto have Max Happiness. It's kinda, it doesn't really matter. Ditto's not really that common anyway, and maybe people will catch on and start running Zero Happiness, but at the moment Frustration is just better than Return, only in that aspect. So that's going to be doing, it's a 102 base power move, but then with Pixelate, it gets the 1.5 times boost stab, because stab, and also the 1.3 damage boost, so it's pretty darn strong, even if you don't get a Dragon Dance up. Now let me talk about this spread. Basically, it just lets you live, or not get 2 KO'd by basically anything. The only thing that I could suggest doing is, I don't think you can run... Okay, the only thing that you could probably do is invest more in defense. I don't know how much more. That way you could live... That way you could live an Ice Beam from Kyurem Black, and then you'd have to invest a little bit more into attack so you can guaranteed OHKO it. But, yeah. So, that's Altaria. It's pretty strong. It sets up on almost everything that tries to wall you. Can easily set up on Alamomola. All that thing can do is Scald Burn you or Toxic, and you have Heal Bell anyway. It sets up on Chansey very easily. Sets up on Sableye, usually forces it to switch. I like going for Dragon Dance the first time I see it, and then Frustration if the matchup ever comes again, because sometimes they just predict a Dragon Dance and want to burn you or something. But even without having +1, or even if you're burned, you still do quite a bit of damage to Sableye, because it is super effective. But, you know, the speed, I think, I don't remember how many EVs. Let me check real quick. Oh, well, I guess it's not going to help me to check, is it? No, but you can run, I think it's 156. God, I gotta put these back in order. Okay, I think it's 156 speed EVs, or 152. That way, after a Dragon Dance, you outspeed Latias, or any base 110s, I guess. Yeah, after that Dragon Dance, and then, you know, OHKO with Frustration. So that's a possibility, but you don't actually need to do that because you're not weak to Dragon-type moves or anything, so their Draco Meteor is not going to be doing any damage because you're immune. And I don't think Psyshock does too much because of these defense EVs. Pretty necessary for walling the Lati twins. So it's good in that regard, and also my team isn't really weak to Latias and Latios at all. Mainly because I do have Heatran, Altaria. My Zapdos is actually especially defensive, interestingly enough, and yeah, Celebi can probably live something and T-Wave them. Also, I'd like to mention that Celebi does not get OHKO'd by Mega Aerodactyl's Aerial Ace, which is kind of funny. Not really relevant in the current metagame, but it's nice. So yeah, that's Mega Altaria. Now the way it goes well with the team is it can either break walls at the beginning, so Suicune has a very easy time sweeping late, or Crocoon can break walls and then Altaria can sweep late. Now the team support, I already said, Heal Bell's really nice if something gets toxic. Really, status isn't a problem on any of my Pokemon except for Hippowdon and Zapdos, but it is quite often actually that someone will toxic them. So the Heal Bell's nice. It's mainly for Altaria, just to Heal Bell on itself. It only has APP, which is unfortunate. Now, I really don't like the idea of switching this Pokemon because it breaks so much stall on its own. But you could run Clefable here. I could see it working just for Kyurem Black. If it becomes that much of a problem, I probably will change this Pokemon to Clefable. So, yeah, that would be unfortunate. Or you could also run, like I said, Earthquake / Fire Blast over Heal Bell. Probably Fire Blast. I feel like Heatran is less of a problem. than Ferrothorn and Skarmory are, but you never know. Then you'd have to change it to that set instead of this one, because you don't want this to be minus. Maybe. Probably still just 2 KOs them both anyway. So I guess you could probably still run this, but Heal Bell is overall more important, I think, for Hippowdon and Zapdos, because if Hippowdon gets toxic, it gets worn down so easily, a lot easier than you would think. Like, if it's trying to wall, say, an opposing Gliscor that doesn't have toxic, then it can definitely take those Earthquakes and slack off all the damage, but if it's trying to wall it, and it does have toxic, then Hippowdon's just gonna die. It's guaranteed that it's gonna lose that 1v1. So there's that. The last Pokemon on my team is Zapdos, especially defensive set, which I find quite underrated. Basically, I just took the physically defensive set, which has the calced special attack and speed, and just switches to special defense, and it's worked out. Again, the ability is pressure, so that helps a lot whenever I'm trying to switch around for momentum, and then my opponent uses up more PP. It's usually negligible. I'll admit that. It's usually negligible unless the game gets really late. So it's mainly useful against opposing stall teams. The item of choice is going to be leftovers, so that you get that passive regen. Safety Goggles is an odd but interesting choice that you could be running. That way it doesn't take sand damage, although leftovers prevents that anyway, but it also is no longer, well, it's immune to powder moves, so it's an interesting choice. I don't really think that it's too viable an option, but if you wanted to, you can make it Safety Goggles. Just something I wanted to throw out there. The moves are Roost, Defog, Thunderbolt, and Hidden Power Ice. Roost, Defog, and Thunderbolt are all pretty staple. Defog removes hazards, which, I mean, granted, isn't too good against my team, but if someone tries to set up spikes and I didn't have Defog, I would definitely lose, if they're good. Roost is for recovery. It's the best recovery it has, and if I'm faster than a Pokemon using an Ice-type move, then it's pretty good. Thunderbolt is an important option to hit opposing water types like Slowbro. That's why I have Celebi, and also why I might want Taunt on one of my Pokemon, just because of Mega Slowbro. It's a great Pokemon, but that's also why I have a lot of phasing moves that it doesn't have a chance to set up. You could run Volt Switch, if you want to run like Volt Switch, U-turn Celebi, but I don't find that as reliable or for utility, because if you're trying to wall something and then you switch out and they stay in and this is your wall for that, it's kind of a problem. But, you know, Hidden Power Ice I put in the last section to hit, you know, the 4-time super effective like Garchomp and Landorus, Gliscor, you know, those bunch, Dragonite, whatever it decides to be, instead of Heat Wave. Now, Heat Wave, of course, takes care of my Steel-type problems for Altaria, but I didn't feel like I needed it. I felt like I needed some more ice coverage, because I only have 2 Pokemon that have ice. Neither of them get stabbed. Neither of it's very strong. So if this Pokemon didn't have any ice coverage, it would only be left to Hippowdon, and it'd be a lot harder to break those opposing Pokemon. So Hidden Power Ice is used there. Like I said, you could switch it to Heat Wave, even U-turn, to, you know, gain momentum or to hit Ferrothorn or whatever. But yeah, I don't really suggest doing that. Now, Zapdos matches up a little bit worse than I'd want it to, just because it's weak to ice. I can't really think of anything I'd switch this to except for maybe Mandibuzz. Is that even no use still? I have no idea. I don't know. Did I miss it? Okay, yeah. Is Mandibuzz, which is extremely bulky. I might actually test that out sometime. I don't want to lose momentum with it, but I feel like it would wall, it won't get OHKO'd by Kyurem, and I can foul play, do a lot of damage. Again, in this last slot, I used to actually run Thunder Wave, because Zapdos can live an Ice Beam from Greninja with this spread. It doesn't get OHKO'd ever, unless after Rocks, but it can live Ice Beam from Greninja and then Thunder Wave it, which helps out immensely. So if you're gonna run Thunder Wave here, that's another viable option. But I find this coverage overall more important. So we're approaching 30 minutes, but I still have a bit more to say. I'm sorry this video is so long. Overall, the playstyle behind this team is not like a lot of stall teams. Let me go look at another that I have real quick. Let's look at this one. It's disgusting, I know. But the main goal behind this team is trap opposing chances or walls with Gothitelle, and then basically just wait until very, very late game until Mega Sableye can sweep. So with something like this team, you'd want just a lot of recovery and then use a lot of time. With mine, every Pokemon has its own recovery, so it doesn't have to rely on Wish, except for Heatran. But Heatran, you know, just in the past has never really had problems with needing that, because you only have it in on against Pokemon that can't really hit it that hard. The only time I would say it would want Wish passing is whenever it has to tank a Hydro Pump from Rotom Wash to set up rocks. Now it can, of course, live most Hydro Pumps, or excuse me, yeah, live most hits from Rotom Wash, unless it's like offensive with Life Orb or Specs, which those aren't usually real, but you know, like I was saying anyway, I digress from that point. It's not that kind of stall team. Sand Stall, I think, relies a lot on offensive pressure, because you want to make your opponent switch. So you want to have moves like Ice Fang and Whirlwind phase out, and you won't let them set up, and then Ice Fang, you want them to switch knowing that you can hit them 4 times super effective. Celebi, it has the recovery, it's also already bulky with its, you know, 100, 100, 100, and then a lot of investment in HP. So it's already bulky and has the regeneration with Recover, so they won't know that you have Leaf Storm once you reveal it, then they won't want their water types to stay in on this. So they're going to want to switch. So you're just gaining a lot of momentum. So because of that, I'll go back to my previous point of running Volt Switch and U-Turn or something. You could. I mean, it's very viable. Not the best option, just my opinion. Maybe you're a better player at it than I am, but in the past, I've just not been very good at using those kind of teams. But it's momentum based, so oops. So if you want Heatran has Roar, Hippowdon has Whirlwind, you could alternatively run Roar right here. I didn't mention that, but it's definitely an option. Does this thing learn Roar and Whirlwind? Because I think Whirlwind's the better one. Doesn't look like it does. That doesn't really matter, of course. But you can run Roar on Zapdos if you want some even more phasing to prevent opposing Pokemon from setting up. So yeah, it's very momentum based, but it's not the strongest. I'll admit it. Ice type coverage, or Ice type Pokemon in general, have a really easy time with this team. Suicune, though, can usually take on stuff like Weavile, and then Heatran can take on, I was gonna say Articuno, but that's not relevant at all. Let's go down the OU list real quick. Azumarill, I do have Suicune for that, and Zapdos, and Celebi, so usually it doesn't get a chance to set up. Bisharp, Hippowdon does a really great job of walling that, and Mega Altaria doesn't like taking an Iron Head, but it can usually just switch into a knockoff or something. Breloom is obviously not a problem because I have Celebi, and while I don't have Psychic, HP Fire will probably 2-hit KO, if not 1-hit KO. Chansey, interestingly enough, hasn't been a problem because I have Pressure Stall and Heal Bell, so it's really irrelevant. Megazard X, I have Mega Altaria, and Megazard Y, I can say the same. Dragonite could be a problem with Choice Band, but I do have Ice Fang on Hippowdon, which would wall it anyway, so Hippowdon can wall it and use Ice Fang. So I'm just going to go over some relevant threats instead of going over each mon. Excadrill, I don't really think that it's a relevant threat, but I have Celebi and Hippowdon anyway. Ferrothorn, that's why I have the fire coverage mons. Garchomp, I have 2 mons with ice, one of them walls it, and Suicune doesn't really care about it. Gengar, it can be pretty strong, because it can hit a lot of my mons super effectively, but Zapdos can stall it out, and Suicune can as well. Taunt Gliscor could be annoying, but I think all of my Pokemon can deal with it fairly well. Greninja's gonna get banned soon, so I don't really want to talk about it, but if I have to, it's very strong against my team. I made this in anticipation of Greninja getting banned, so hopefully it does. If not, my team will be a bit less viable. but Suicune kind of walls it. Gyarados, I have a lot of phasing Pokemon. And if it's Mega, Celebi can probably live a +0 crunch, and Suicune can hopefully get a burn off on it. Heracross is actually kind of a threat, unfortunately, or fortunately for me. I run a set on Altaria that doesn't get 2-hit KO'd by Rock Blast. Keldeo's pretty darn strong, goes without being said, but Celebi and Suicune do a good job at walling that, same for Mega Altaria. Kyurem Black can 6-0 my team quite easily if I let it, I think. I mean, I haven't had too many problems with in the past. The specially based attacker is very strong though, so if you want to, you could probably run some more speed on Celebi and Thunder Wave that before it becomes a problem. Landorus Therian really isn't a problem because it doesn't set up on my Pokemon. Lottie, Twins, I do have Mega Altaria. I'm not really seeing... I mean, Mammothswine could be pretty strong, but I have Suicune, so... Mainly just things with ice coverage, and my dog is starting to bark. Maybe Mega Venusaur might be a little bit strong. Yeah, Mega Venusaur could be strong. I'd like to see more of it. So if you want to go out there and start running Mega Venusaur, that'd be great. So Mega Venusaur is pretty cool. I think that my way of dealing with it, I don't really know. I'd probably just try to get up some Calm Minds with Suicune before it comes in, and then stall out its Synthesis with pressure. Otherwise, it's kind of difficult. I'd have to, if it becomes relevant, then you can run like Hidden Power Flying or something. You could run some sort of thing on this, or you could just run Psychic, which is probably the most viable option on Celebi. Another Pokemon that's actually really strong against this is Choice Banded Staraptor. Now, granted, it's not a very popular choice at the moment. I guess Choice Banded Talonflame would be more go-to than that. My Pokemon deal with that quite well anyway. But Choice Banded Talonflame, Choice Banded Staraptor can 2-hit KO my entire team. It obviously gets worn out and can't sweep 6-0. Unless, of course, they run like 4 Healing Wish mobs with it, which would be crazy and not even bad. Yeah, probably kind of bad, but yeah, it's pretty strong. My way of dealing with that is try and burn it or something with Suicune, or if it's using Brave Bird, I can go into Zapdos. If it uses Double Edge, I have Heatran. Unfortunately, Final Gambit will do a lot if it just does that turn 1. I do have Recovery though, so it's not too bad. And then Mega Medicham. If it has Ice Punch, then that Pokemon's pretty good against my team. It doesn't OHKO Celebi though, I don't think, so that can probably just T-Wave, and it definitely doesn't OHKO Mega Altaria, so I can just kill it off with Frustration right off the bat from there. So, speaking of mons like that, I think I discussed Weavile earlier. It's pretty strong against my team, except for Suicune. Knockoff only does like 30%, so after that I can just Scald until I burn it. So Suicune walls that quite well. Let me just scroll down this again, see if there's anything relevant. Mega Sableye, I already said I have Mega Altaria. Mega Slowbro can be a problem, but Leaf Storm from Celebi does a lot, even if it is at +1. Sylveon's kind of an interesting case. I have Heatran for it, so I just have to wear it down like that. Its Wishing is very annoying, and if it specs and has HP Ground, that's even more annoying, but I can deal with that quite well. I don't see many Terrakion, and if I do, it's usually just Lead Stealth Rock, so Hippowdon takes care of it. If it was banded, though, Hippowdon would have a little bit more trouble, but if it uses Close Combat, I can just go into Celebi, and if it uses Stone Edge, then I can just go into Hippowdon. Thundurus is interestingly strong against my team. Unfortunately for it, I am running Specially Defensive Zapdos. So the best it has versus that is HP Ice, which I don't know if it 2-hit KOs. I don't think it does, I'll be honest. And then I have HP Ice of my own, so he'll be worn down with his the Life Orb damage he's taking, and my Heatran is especially defensive anyway. Mega Diancie can be a problem, more so if I didn't have Celebi, but I do. Usually, they might run HP Fire. I don't know if it's more common to run HP Fire or just Calm Mind instead. Either way, Celebi's pretty good versus that. Diggersby is kind of gaining popularity. I think it's a terrible Pokemon. I don't like it. But whatever, I have Suicune. Hawlucha's not really used as much. Klefki, I've got a lot of coverage for that. Mega Lopunny can probably do a lot of damage to my team. That's why it can't OHKO Celebi with Return or Frustration, so that can be Thunder Waved, and then Hippowdon can probably just stall it out. Manaphy can be strong. If it's Calm Mind, then I'm not going to let it get up any Calm Minds with my phasers. If it's Tailwind, excuse me, I meant Tail Glow, then I'll have to rely on the power of Mega Altaria. I'm not really sure how I can beat Tail Glow Manaphy, I just don't let it set up, I guess. If there's ever a chance for it to set up, then I have to phase it. Again, Baton Pass is a problem for any team, namely Stall. I guess I kind of just had to Whirlwind, or Roar those out. So if any of these three gain more popularity, because, you know, after the Baton Pass nerf, these things lost popularity, and Manaphy overall isn't the most popular pick at the moment, but it might sometime become popular. I digress. If any of that happens, then I'll go ahead and run an additional phasing move on Zapdos, and maybe even Roar Suicune if it becomes that much of a problem. Or I'll just probably switch teams and make a better one. Not really seeing anything else to be afraid of here. I mean, Victini, Hippowdon does a great job walling that. If it happens to be the special one, then I think Altaria can do pretty good. I don't think Glaciate does too much damage. I'll go ahead and actually calc that real quick, just so I can bring some accuracy to this, so I'm going to pause. So, I was correct. Even if it's max special attack with a Life Orb, which it usually won't be, and it uses Glaciate, it has a 0.4% chance to it KO Altaria. So that's really not going to happen. I can just probably Roost Stall that or go into Suicune or whatnot. If it is the special set, Suicune can generally wall that, and if it's the physical set, then I have Heatran, of course. And Brick Break, I don't know, it's just interesting. If it runs that, then props, but I don't think that's too big a deal. Maybe Magic Guard, Clefable could become a problem, but that is to say I do have Roar Heatran, so it's not really a problem. Overall, I'm approaching 42 minutes, so I don't want to take too much more time. Like I said, it's a very momentous team, so you got to play it like that. If you're ahead, you got to stay ahead. You got to make the man plays sometimes. That was something else. I'll be willing to admit that I've lost a few games, not with this team, but I've lost a few games in the past because I was playing momentum teams and I played defensively. So don't be afraid to play more aggressive with Stall. I like building teams that can go aggressive whenever you're ahead. If you're behind, of course, don't forget you're playing Stall. You have defensive Pokemon. You can chill until late game and then sweep later. But if you're already ahead, you want to make the aggressive plays. If they have a Gliscor, you have a Hippowdon, you haven't revealed Ice Fang, go for it. They won't expect it. Don't be safe and just slack off or something. Sometimes you just have to double switcher. You know, I just want to, I don't know how else to say it. If you're in the lead, make sure you're staying in the lead. Go for the plays. If they're risky, but you'll stay in the lead even if you make the wrong play, go for it. It's worth it. Always think ahead. Of course, these are just general Pokemon things. I'm running out of things to say. I don't want to take more time by showing more relevant calcs or whatnot. So I don't really know of anything else I can address without going into game mechanics already. Some matchups are team specific. Usually if you're going against Hyper Offense, you know, it's going to end earlier and you have to make sort of aggressive switches. Usually against Hyper Offense, Celebi is pretty good because they won't have anything to take a Leaf Storm, or at least not two, and a lot of Hyper Offense teams don't really care about hazards, so they don't want to waste time rapid spinning or defogging. So it's nice to have that Stealth Rock support and then the poke damage from Sandstorm, plus if they have Life Orb, so that's already minus 12 if it's just neutral, minus 6, so that's minus 18. And then minus 10% from Life Orb, so they're losing minus 28% in one turn. Well, I guess that's not possible to switch into Stealth Rocks and do some damage, but you know what I mean. They're already minus 28% just for existing, so it's pretty decent. I guess that's how it goes against Hyper Offense. You kind of just have to switch around, and that's why. Okay, you kind of just have to switch around to something that can attack, but that's another reason, or another thing I want to mention with being aggressive and playing a more offensive playstyle for Stall. Notice I'm running like some sort of attacking move that's kind of good on each Pokemon. usually 2 attacking moves, unless it's, you know, these 2 mons right here, which are just, this is Pseudo Crow, and this is actually Crocoon. That's because I don't want my Pokemon just sitting there doing nothing. Heatran, if an opposing Heatran switched in and I didn't have Earth Power here, say I had Facade, which will never happen, I'll be doing nothing. I'll just have to switch. I don't like being forced to switch like that, or for that reason, so I like running 2. If you're going against Stall, I think it'd be really nice to have Taunt on Heatran. Yeah, I think it'd be really nice for Heatran to have Taunt against opposing Stall, but I haven't really had too much problem, and usually they have Mega Sableye, which taunts me right back, so it's irrelevant. But, you know, so it goes against Stall. Against Balance, I think that's probably a quite eclectic matchup, so it's kind of hard to say, yeah, this is how you play against Balanced, because most of these Pokemon can be run on a Balanced team. Yeah, I forgot to mention Mew. Depends on the set. Usually a Stall Breaker set can be worn down, especially if you're using Crocoon or Zapdos. Usually they don't run Roar/Whirlwind, whichever Mew gets, so they can't stop you from using, or they can't stop you once you've already set up a Calm Mind with Crocoon. They do have Taunt, that's obvious, and they do outspeed you, because I think they run like 244 speed or something, or is that this Pokemon? Okay, yeah, they usually hit up there. Or that's my Heatran. Darn it, it's not my Heatran either. But anyway, they usually hit a decent speed, so they're going to be able to outspeed you in Taunt. It was my Celebi the whole time. But you can usually wear it down enough to where you can, you know, whatever, to where you can get rid of it. Geez, I lost what I was saying, but it doesn't really matter. I think Mega Altaria is the best slot here. I mean, I already said this, and I'm just going back over old things, but Fairy type is great. I think the only thing I would switch it to, I mean, you could run a Azumarill, I'll be honest. It can be nice, but it's not as reliable. It doesn't have the team support that Heal Bell gives, which is why you could also run Clefable, but then you run into the problem of having too many special attackers. So, you know, can't be perfect, like I said, but you do have something. So Balance, like I said, it's an eclectic matchup. Just depends on how aggressive they are. If they're aggressive at the beginning, which usually Balance doesn't do, but then you just want to preserve your walls and never let your win condition die. You have to look at the team matchup. I guess this is against any team. You look at team matchup and decide, is Celebi really good this game? Is Leaf Storm just going to win after I take out one Mon? Or is Crocoon/Altaria going to win? You look at coverage. If they have more steel types, then you decide if it's worth you decide if it's worth sweeping with Altaria by getting those steels down. If it's not worth it, if it would just be too much trouble to deal with the steel types only for Altaria to sweep, then just go ahead and make the goal to sweep with Suicune if that's possible. If they have, let's say, Vaporeon with Water Absorb, it's going to be a lot more of a hassle to try and sweep with Suicune because it has Water Absorb, like, you know. So you just got to look at it that way. Usually Hippowdon isn't the most useful Pokemon, which is why you could change it out to Tyranitar, which is almost useful in every game. Especially if it's a Pursuit kind, which is the only kind I would say you would want to switch this out into, especially Defensive Pursuit. But it does provide a lot of utility, especially early game before it gets worn down a little bit, because for some reason Hippowdon, even with this massive defense, it just gets worn down. But yeah, it can wall late game, especially if you take out things that would otherwise kill it. It can definitely wall late game and stall that out. So it is classified as a stall team, just because sometimes that's the condition. These are all sort of more, or like I said at the very beginning, if you remember that, I do have these 4 Pokemon, which are all Gen 4-esque. The Hippowdon, the Celebi, the Suicune, the Heatran, the Zapdos. That's 5 Pokemon. I'm already forgetting how to count. Those are all Gen 4-esque. Bringing them to Gen 6 might be a mistake, but I don't think so. It all works out. The only problem with those 4 total in the current meta, I'm not really seeing a problem. Is Gothitelle a problem? Yeah, I think I'll talk about that real quick. On the subject of trappers in general, Dugtrio isn't a very popular choice right now. I don't know why. I guess it's just not really that strong with 80 base attack. Is it still OU? No, I think it's UU. Alright, I'll just be honest, I have no idea. I have a lot of tiers under OU. Is it RU then? Wow, how the mighty have fallen. Oh my gosh. So Dugtrio's all the way down here in RU. It's just not a popular choice. 80 base attack is not that good. Base 120 speed isn't as good as it used to be last gen, or really the gen before. Just because a lot more Pokemon are scarfed that can kill it. But if it does happen to exist, then Altaria can just switch before it Mega Evolves. Zapdos can just switch, and the only Pokemon that cares about Dugtrio is Heatran. That's real, and if I play smart, then that matchup will never happen. The next Pokemon is Magnezone, which, I mean, again, like with Dugtrio, the only thing it can trap is Heatran. And it can only kill it reliably if it runs Hidden Power Ground, which usually it runs HP Fire for Ferrothorn, so it's not that big a deal, especially because it has used Flash Cannon to kill Celebi and Thunderbolt to kill Suicune, so it depends on what it locks itself into. But after you find out what it does, then you can just switch to the other Pokemons. Excuse me, switch to the other Pokemon, not Pokemons. I guess Wobbuffet is also a trapper. I think that's in you, because trapping abilities are banned from the lower tiers. There it is. Rest in peace, buddy. Some nice HP. But, yeah, that's not really relevant, and very easy to work around Wobbuffet. And I think the only trapper left is Gothitelle. It can be a problem, because it can trick one of my Pokemon and then try and set up on it, but I guess I just have Altaria for that, because that can't be tricked at all, because of its Altaria Knight. So, not really too big of a deal there. Unless wait, I can't just switch into that, I'm silly. So what really matters? If it comes in on my Heatran, I'll just roar that out. If it comes in on Suicune, I guess I have to Scald, so that could be a problem. Comes in the Celebi, I guess that's why you might want to run Baton Pass or U-Turn, just in case Gothitelle becomes a problem, or Volt Switch on this, if you feel like it's more of a problem to you. A lot of players play differently, so maybe you have particular problems guessing what kind of Mamoswine set it is, even though Mamoswine runs like 3 moves. So, yeah. Not really too big of a deal, unless Gothitelle. You just kind of have to predict what kind of player you're facing. Usually people don't lead with Gothitelle, so I don't know. On the subject of leads, there's a lot on this team. Sometimes I just lead with Suicune to get off a nice Scald on their obvious Slanderous lead or something. Almost everything on this team is a lead. I think the only thing I haven't led with is Mega Altaria. It's usually not good to bring that in too early unless you need to heal Bell. Or unless you're against a Sableye, of course. Some predicted leads, of course, are going to be Heatran and Hippowdon. Those are the most obvious leads, Hippowdon being the absolute most obvious. So your opponent will usually predict that you're going to lead with Hippowdon or Heatran if they're looking at it that way. And they're both pretty viable leads. Hippowdon hits most current leads right now. If you think you're going against a Rocky Helmet Garchomp, you can Earthquake that turn 1 and then Ice Fang it turn 2. That way you take less Rocky Helmet damage. That's how it goes against that lead matchup. If it goes against Landorus, you probably just want to Ice Fang that right away, reveal that you have it. That way you get off the extra damage, because even at -1 attack, it does a lot. I don't know what other common leads are at the moment. Against a Klefki lead, if you lead with a Hippowdon, you can probably just Earthquake that, or actually everything on this team except for Altaria hits Klefki, so it's not really relevant. If you're against an opposing Hippowdon, you have Ice Fang, but it doesn't do as much as Earthquake, so whatever. You have Earthquake on this, and you have Suicune to switch into or lead with, you have Celebi to lead with. I think that lead Celebi is pretty strong, because usually people don't predict that you'll be Life Orb Leaf Storm with so much investment right off the bat, so being able to do that is pretty good. Now I wanted to check something real quick. Tyranitar, no, that's probably not the most standard set. Not sure what most Tyranitar leads will be able to do versus the main leads on this team. I think one of the worst things to lead with anyway is Heatran. I don't like having it in unless I'm absolutely certain that the opposing Pokemon won't be able to do much damage. That's how I've been playing Heatran. I'm generally, I admit, I'm a pretty bad Heatran player. I used to be really bad at preserving it. Now I think I play it a lot more defensively than I need to because it doesn't have recovery and I don't like making it take too much damage. In general, I like to keep my Heatran alive, so I don't like leading with it, like I said, unless I'm absolutely certain that they're going to lead with something that can't do damage, or if their team just generally doesn't have anything that will be able to do damage versus it. But, so if they do lead something with damage, I'm forced to switch out with Heatran, which isn't too good. Then they get something for free, whether it be free damage off on one of my other Pokemon, or, free hazards. It's just not good in general to lead with this. Provides a lot less momentum for the team. Having a Suicune lead is also not the best, and that's only because you don't want to set up Calm Mind on turn 1, obviously, and the only thing it has to do is Scald, which can be good against something that I don't really know what's 4 times weak to Suicune that would lead. I'm looking, not really seeing anything. But anyway, I digress from that point. You might want to Scald sometimes against, say, an opposing Hippowdon lead or Tyranitar lead. I actually led this versus an obvious Infernape lead as well. And if they try to Endeavor you, do that kind of thing, you have the recovery, and you can usually get up a rest even at 1 HP. Well, after leftovers, you'll be a bit more than that. But even if you're at, like, a very low HP, Suicune has a decent speed tier, 85, so usually you can get a rest off. Going on the subject of recovery, I've already talked about how many Pokemon have the recovery option, but it's actually very necessary on this kind of team. A lot of times you're not going to have time to switch into Zapdos because it's especially defensive, and Defog, because you're not going to be able to tank like a Stone Edge from Landorus anymore with Zapdos. You usually will outspeed the more defensive ones. I mean, I'm fairly certain Zapdos can tank one uninvested Stone Edge from Landorus, and then 2-hit KO back with Hidden Power Ice and outspeed, so. But yeah, without the physical set, usually you won't have time to defog on some of these more physically threatening Pokemon. So you want the passive recovery. Again, right now I'm trying to tell you a bit how to play this team. You want the passive recovery on each mon, and you have to manage when you want to use that, and when you won't be losing momentum for doing it. If you go for Slack Off with Hippowdon, and you let your opponent switch out into something that you could have hit or predicted or whirlwinded out or something, you're losing momentum, even if you're gaining HP. A lot of times, Pokemon that switch into Hippowdon, or even Heatran, usually it's these two, they switch into a mon that can set up on it. That's a problem. If something wants to set up a Belly Drum, it's not really too much of a problem because you have Roar and Whirlwind on those, which I'd like to mention is kind of why I run them. But, if they usually switch into something that will either OHKO or set up, and that's not that great. Predictions are kind of big with a team like this, or any stall team in general, because, well, not stall team in general, with any team in general, I would say, but the way I play stall, you kind of need to predict a lot more, because your Pokemon aren't going to be the fattest. You're not running Chansey or Skarnbliss or anything. You're running Pokemon that are fun to use, in my opinion. I think all these Pokemon are fun, and also bulky, so, I mean, it's not the fattest stall team. It's a lot more offensive than you might think, and I'm trying to just summarize it here. So, yeah, I guess I will summarize. It's not the biggest, fattest stall team. It's very offensive. You want to gain momentum. It's not hyper offense because, you know, you have these bulkier Pokemon. It's not bulky offense. I wouldn't suggest, or I wouldn't call it that either, because you are going to be switching out a bit more, and you are going to try to preserve all your Pokemon. as soon as one Pokemon goes down on this team, it's kind of easy to topple them down. Not easy, I would say, but a lot easier to topple down the rest of the team because it's got a foundation of Pokemon. So anyway, I digress from that point. You want to play offensively, aggressively, I guess, and just enjoy it, really. Mega Altaria has been a great buff, and Gen 4, it was nice to visit the kind of team style again, so I really hope that you enjoy this kind of video. I might do it again, but it took a very long time. I had to pause a bit, but it's been an hour. You're crazy if you watch this whole thing. That's just what I'm going to say, so yeah, I'll spoon you later.